Hey Magic players, this is Ben with MTG Frontier Guide, and today we're doing a standard deck tech for Hour of Devastation, and we're doing Temur good stuff. Now to start things out, we're running 3 copies of Glorybringer. It's a 5-drop, 2 red, 3 generic. It's a 4/4 dragon with flying and haste, and you can exert Glorybringer as it attacks. If you do, you get to deal 4 damage to target non-dragon creature an opponent controls. So whenever you exert a creature, it won't untap during your next untap step. So this is great turn 5 play whenever you can play it right after they've played something like a Gideon, swing over top, and then kill the Gideon. That's one of the greatest plays with this card, and now that Aetherworks is gone, it gives this card a chance to actually see some play. Next up, we have 3 copies of Goblin Dark-Dwellers. Now we gotta play this one while we've got a chance. It's gonna be rotating out in the fall. It's a 5-drop as well. It's 2 red, 3 generic, just like the Glorybringer. It's a 4/4 also, and it's got Menace. Now when it enters the battlefield, you get to cast a target instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard without paying its cost, and if you do, that card gets put into exile instead of back in the graveyard. But it helps us 2 for 1 our opponent, so we get a creature out on the board while we get to recast one of our spells from the graveyard, potentially taking out one of their creatures or searching up another land or something like that. We'll cover the instants and sorceries here in a bit. Now the next creature we have are 2 copies of Rhonas the Indomitable. I really felt like with our 4 power Glorybringer and Goblin Dark-Dwellers that Rhonas would actually have a good opportunity in this deck, and it helps, give trample to some of the other creatures, and it's nice to have a Death Touch Indestructible God on the battlefield. So he's 3 converted mana cost, 1 green and 2 generic. He's a 5/5. Like I said, he's got Death Touch and he's indestructible. He can't attack unless he can't attack or block unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater. And then he has the ability of paying 1 green and 2 generic mana, and you give another target creature +2/+0 and trample until the end of turn. So, like I was saying, with Glorybringer and Goblin Dark-Dwellers, it's a really good inclusion in the deck. And then that also brings us into the next card, which is an oldie but goodie, and it's going to be 4 copies of Sylvan Advocate. Sylvan Advocate is a 2-drop, 1 green, 1 generic. It's a 2/3, and it's got Vigilance, and if you control 6 or more lands, it gets +2/+2, so it turns into a 4/5. Once again, turning on Rhonas in the later stages of the game. And Sylvan Advocate is great in the early stages of the game because it provides a good blocker, and it can attack with Vigilance and stay back on defense as well. Next up, we have another card that doesn't quite start out with 4 power, but it does get up to 4 power as the game progresses, and that's going to be 4 copies of Tireless Tracker. Tireless Tracker is 3 converted mana cost, 1 green, 2 generic. It's a 3/2. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get to investigate, so you get a clue token. You can sacrifice a clue token by paying 2 mana, and you get to draw a card. When you sacrifice a clue token, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on the tracker. So it just takes sacrificing 1 clue to get the tracker up to the 4 power to turn on Rhonas. Okay, so finally, we get to our first Hour of Devastation card, and we're running 2 copies of the Locust God. The Locust God has a 6 converted mana cost. It's 1 red, 1 blue, and 4 generic. It's a 4/4 flyer, and when you draw a card, you get to create a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. So that's anytime you draw a card. So as long as the Locust God is on your battlefield at the beginning of your turn, when you draw your card, you automatically get a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. This works really well with the clue tokens that are produced by the Tireless Tracker. The Locust God also has an ability of paying 2 generic, 1 blue, and 1 red to draw a card and then discard a card. Also, whenever the Locust God dies, you get to return it back to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So All in all, this is a great card. It's really good at grinding out games, especially in the late game if you've had trackers out producing clues. It can get really out of hand with the insects very quickly. Okay, so moving into our instants and sorceries, we're going to start things out with 3 copies of Magma Spray. It's 1 red instant, and it deals 2 damage to target creature, and if that creature would die this turn, you exile it instead. This is very important for a Graveyard Matters format that we have currently. We've got things like Embalm and Eternalize. We've also got things like Scrap Heap Scrounger and zombies that like to recur from the graveyard. So having that exile clause is very important with the current meta. Next we have another Hour of Devastation card. We've got 4 copies of Abrade. It's a 2 converted mana cost instant spell, 1 red and 1 generic. You get to choose one. It's either deal 3 damage to target creature or destroy target artifact. It's a great target to hit with Goblin Dark-Dwellers to recast it, kill something else. Not only does it kill the small creatures against like an aggro opponent or another mid-range opponent, but destroying that target artifact means it can kill a Torrential Gearhulk at instant speed. So it's a very good card to have in the deck. I really like this card a lot. Now to finish out our removal, we have 2 copies of Sweltering Suns. It's a 3 converted mana cost sorcery spell. It's 2 red and 1 generic, and it deals 3 damage to each creature, and it also has cycling 3, so you can discard it and draw a card in those matchups where you might not need it. But it does great against cleaning up the little creatures in an aggro match to help us get to those later rounds, which is where we want to be. Now, since we're running 3 colors, we are running 4 copies of Attune with Aether. It's a 1 converted mana cost sorcery spell. It's 1 green, and it allows you to search for a basic land from your library, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then you get 2 energy counters. And to finish out our instants and sorceries, we have 3 copies of Glimmer of Genius. It's a 4 converted mana cost instant spell. It's 1 blue and 3 generic. It allows you to scry 2 and then draw 2 cards, and then you get 2 energy counters. Now, the scry 2 before you draw 2 cards is very good because it allows you to look at those top 2 cards, and if those aren't what you're needing at that time, you can put them on the bottom and then draw the next 2. So essentially you get to dig 4 cards deep if you're needing a specific answer. So very good card, and it works great with the Locust God. It creates extra insects if you've got it out on the battlefield. You can do it at their instep since it is instant speed, so you can hold up mana on their turn. It's a very good card. That's why it's included in the deck. Now we're going to finish up the deck with 2 copies of Chandra, Torch of Defiance. It's a 4 converted mana cost planeswalker. She's 2 generic and 2 red mana. She comes in with 4 loyalty counters. She's got a +1 ability to exile the top card of your library. You can cast it that turn. You do still pay the mana. However, if you don't cast it, you get to deal 2 damage to each opponent. And it is damage, so it can be redirected to an opposing planeswalker if you need to. Her second +1 ability lets you add 2 red mana to your mana pool, so you can use it to ramp out possibly Locust God or a couple of spells if you need to. She's got a -3 ability that deals 4 damage to target creature. And her ultimate, her -7, you get an emblem with whenever you cast a spell, the emblem deals 5 damage to target creature or player. It's very difficult to try to win through her emblem. If you get her emblem, it is pretty much game over, especially with all the card draw that we have in the deck. So it closes things out rather quickly. Okay, so moving into our mana base, we're going to start things out with 4 copies of Game Trail and 4 copies of Cinder Glade. And then 1 Spirebluff Canal, 2 Botanical Sanctums, and 4 Evolving Wilds. And then 4 basic forest, 4 basic mountain, and 1 basic island. Now, as usual, your sideboard will be dependent on what you're expecting to face at your local game shop, so whatever your local meta consists of. Some of the things that I've included have been Appetite for the Unnatural, in case you need to get rid of any kind of enchantments. Maybe extra Sweltering Suns if you're expecting to see a lot of aggro. Prowling Serpapard is really good against blue counter magic. Chandra's Defeat is really good against red decks. And my favorite card in the sideboard I run 4 of is going to be Negate. It works really good against a lot of different decks, whether it's planeswalkers or control. It's just a good sideboard card to have and a good option to be able to bring that in and kind of fight that battle. Okay, and that's it for our Temur Good Stuff deck. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to hit that like button. Share it if you'd like to share it. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. If you build the deck, let us know how it runs for you. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you want to see in the future. I've got a lot of things that I'm working on currently, so I'm hoping that you'll enjoy those. So get out there, play some Magic, have some fun.